Welcome back to the Success Festival APAC Reloaded. I hope you enjoyed the event so far. Again, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all speakers, attendees, and partners. If you do like our content, please head over to customersuccesscollective.com and check out our membership plan. With the CSC membership, you'll be able to have full access to on-demand videos, templates, framework, exclusive articles, and also rewatch all the presentation videos of this event. Now it's time, sit back and enjoy the next session.
Hi everyone, thanks for streaming into this session on decoding churn today. Before I delve into the crux of the matter, allow me a couple of minutes to set the stage for our topic of discussion today. And then I'll give a quick background of myself so you understand where my experience comes from. As in CS, every business is different, and so context is quite important because your customer needs will also be different. And then I will share what I've learned about managing churn as it happens. So I'll use a personal experience as a jumping point in setting the context. So what you're looking here is that back in 2018, I received an email from a customer requesting to churn. I am certain most of you, if not all, have received similar breakup emails from your customers. Now, these emails are common, and if you're lucky, your customer would actually spend some time to explain to you what they are really thinking. But often, this may be just all you get, right? A couple of liners, because your customers are busy and they just don't have time to explain to you in detail why they've decided to pause or stop the subscription. And if your customers are culturally Asian, you may find sometimes that the response is less direct and less confrontational. And so in that situation, you may not get to understand what your customer is thinking and the real reason why they have decided to churn. So I do think that all road leads to Rome. So you'll find that when you peel away all the layers of the onion, it is very often, majority of the time, that is the lack of value experienced that's the root cause of churn. However, depending on what your customer is saying to you, right, there are tactical actions that you can take, A, to be able to deliver the value right now, or B, to buy you time so that you have the opportunity to deliver the value so that they can experience it. This matters because churn compounds, right? We know in recurring revenue business model, churn compounds. It gets worse as your customer base grows, and it's much harder to patch a leaky bucket of churn with new sales. So we must remember that churn in itself is not a problem, but it's a signal. And when the signal is flashing, what do? You don't ignore a signal that flashes, right? Because it's telling you that there's an action that you need to take, right? So focusing on the action that you can take when the signal is flashing helps and matters. So quick background on myself. My background has always been in the intersection between retail and tech. And in 2018, I co-founded Omnalytics, which is a B2B SaaS retail insights platform. We work with anywhere from SME to mid-market to enterprise brands, such as Uniqlo, Lenzing, and Puma, to help them understand the market that they trade in. And also very shout out to the team because we were named number 2 in G2's retail intelligence software very recently, as well as 12th for best commerce product in 2022. So through the experience of building Omnalytics, I had the opportunity to spearhead the inception as well as the scaling of our CS function. And today we are about 12 people strong. And if any of you recall, if you were in the CS space or profession back in 2018, there's frustratingly little resource on customer success, let alone those that is relevant to a geographical context. So last year I decided that, I'll take the lead, and I put together and published the Southeast Asia Customer Success Survey 2021 as a way to spark conversation to accelerate the growth of our discipline in our region. I think there's a lot that we CS in the region can gain from sharing our experiences and thoughts with each other, because it can be quite different from running a CS department compared to our American counterparts. So that's a little bit about me, and that's a little bit about the context of the material that we're going to go into today. So today I'm going to share with you my experience of what to do after a customer has raised the decision to churn. So it's after. Many inks have been spilled, I'm sure, already on what to do to prevent the churn from happening in the first place, so I won't touch on that. For those who are familiar with the material I'm going to share today, it's not rocket science. And if you're familiar with it, I hope it serves as a good reminder of the tools that you have in your arsenal. And for those who are new to the material, I hope you find these helpful next time you're faced with a churn request. And so here are the 5 common reasons that you will hear or you may hear from your customers, the reasons for churn. And in the subsequent slides, I'll share with you what we can do tactically. So the 5 reasons that I am going to touch on today is not enough time to use, didn't meet expectations, product is too hard to use, loss of stakeholder, and loss of budget. So let's dive into it. So the first reason that a customer may come to you and say they want to churn is that they have no time, they or their team have no time to utilize the product or the service, and they increasingly find it hard to justify continuing the subscription because of underutilization. So when they share that with you, what they're really thinking is that they can't see how is it important enough for them to make time to use it. So in a situation like this, you should already know that they're not really using it when their adoption behaviors are not trending the way that you want, and that intervention should have been done quite much earlier. So shouldn't really catch you by surprise. But if you do find yourself in this situation, one of the things that you can do is start thinking about how can you very quickly get your customers off the ground, right? Are there any things that you can do with pre-configurations? Over here, I listed a couple of examples. For example, can you cobble together a personalized training workshop to help them get up to speed? Are you able to record really bite-sized videos using software like Loom in how to use certain parts of the product or execute certain use cases of your services? Or templates. So templates is something that we used to do quite a bit, and also depending on the client's needs these days, is that one of the key actions at Analytics we identified for our customer to do is to create a report with the analytics and the insights that they've gotten from our platform, right? But sometimes to tell someone to just take information and create a report, there are several steps and could cause friction, especially if the person is very busy, has a lot of competing priorities. So what we decided to do is do a quick and dirty way of just, using Google Slides, creating a couple of templates report that we know our customers would continuously need to use to share during their management meetings or team meetings. And so that made things a lot easier. So what our users had to do was just to go onto the Analytics dashboard, extract the insights that they have gotten that's relevant to the questions that they're trying to answer, plug it into the templates, and they're off and ready to go. And that made things a lot faster for them in order to achieve what they wanted to do with our dashboard. And so in this situation, it's really, getting down and thinking about what can you do to give your customers all the TLC to get through this period. And don't be afraid to do things that don't scale, because at this point in time, you want to get through this period so that you're able to continuously work with them and retain this MRR, right? So don't worry too much about doing things that don't scale. And what I mean by that is don't be afraid to even use the product on behalf of the customer. At this point, what you want to do is retain the account and help them get to that point as easily and quickly as possible. All right, so the next reason that you may hear is didn't meet expectations. So this can happen quite often. Maybe at this point in time of the subscription, your customer is expecting to reach a certain milestone already, or that they're expecting to see a certain results, certain ROI already, but perhaps expectation wasn't clearly laid out in the beginning of the timeline that is needed to achieve these milestones or these results, right? And so then they're coming to you and say, it didn't meet my expectation. So when they're saying those words, what they're thinking is that I'm really disappointed and I feel frustrated at where we are. And that kind of does leave a bad taste in the mouth. And there are several factors that has led us to here, right? Some of the things are, the sales process were we selling to the ideal customer profile, were expectation properly passed from the team before us, the sales team. That said, regardless, I'm always of the opinion that CS has within the control to reset expectations. I think it's much more productive for us to focus our energy on what we can control versus what we can't control, which is what happened at the start of the sales process or other things that's out of our influence. So so we should all along the way, right from the onboarding to multiple touch points with our customers, we always have that opportunity to reset expectations. So this shouldn't really be an acceptable excuse when contract renewal conversation happens. Again, however, if you find yourself in this situation, what do you do? First of all, before throwing everything out of the window and hunkering down on coming up with different ways or ideas, what you can do is kind of take a look at what you have had before, which is any documented expectations. Sometimes you guys had actually met the expectation and the milestones and the result that is agreed upon, but businesses change, priorities change, goals change, and there are a lot of things that is on your customer's plate. So maybe they've just forgotten that value was delivered, expectations were met, right? So it is also our responsibility to remind them that this is what you set out to do and here's how we have gotten there. Perhaps we just needed to realign now that the goals have changed, right? So before throwing everything out of the window, look at what you already have. However, sometimes it's better to let bygone be bygone, because that conversation that is continuously focusing on the past, or maybe that you don't have any documented expectations, can feel like a unproductive and not positive conversation that's going nowhere. So in this situation, it is helpful to actually start orienting your customer focus towards the future. And what I mean by that is kind of taking a step back and putting on kind of like an SDR AE hat and start doing discovery, understanding, okay, fine, regardless what has happened, tell me, where do you want to go in the next 6 months? Where do you want to go in the next 12 months? Any key priorities, projects that is very critical? And listen to that and find out what is it that they need. And if your product or services remains to have the ability to help your customers reach their milestones and goals, show them that, orient them that to the future, and tell them that, hey, you know what, actually you have this goal, here's how we can help, let's continue working together. Orienting your customer focus to the future sometimes can help make the conversation a lot more positive and a lot more productive, because it's future focused and potential and opportunity focused. All right, so we have covered two reasons. We're going to move on to the third, which is product is too hard to use. So product is always a work in progress, right? It's never going to be a finished a job. So sometimes things like product is too hard to use comes up. For example, at one point we were having customers coming to us and saying that, oh, there's just too many steps to creating the report that we need on a day-to-day basis. The insights are super helpful. We always get really good feedback when we present the insights at our meetings, but it's just too many steps and too many workflow. Now, when your customer is saying that, in their head, they're thinking a variation of, you know what, your product experience sucks, like get your act together. And it can be challenging when it is a user experience of the product that is actually affecting whether the client achieves value or not, right? And as a CS, you may feel quite like, oh, what is it that's within my control? I've already put in all the bug requests, I've already put in all the product requests, but product has a 3 months, 6 months, 12 months product roadmap that's already been locked in, right? Now, that said, again, remember the mantra is that focus on what you can control. It doesn't mean that you need to then just sit back and then watch that churn happen 3-4 months down the road, right? So here's a perfect opportunity to get creative. Think about all the ways that you as a CS can make the product experience a lot easier to use without a product team. This, I would say, is also a variation of the first reason, which is not enough time to use. And so the things such as, personalized training, on-demand video library, creating templates, including product chats, that sort of thing, works over here. And again, don't be afraid to do things that don't scale. Maybe even use the product on behalf of the customer, because I risk being a broken tape record, but patching a churn MRR is a lot harder with new MRR. So you want to try to see and find ways to be able to retain this account. All right. Okay, let's move on to the next reason, which is the fourth reason. If the pain is there, wait, let me take a step back. Okay, so lost budget. So sometimes your client might come to you with a cash flow issue, or that they may have made a mistake in their budgeting and now they are paying for it by needing to tighten their wallet. And an example, or could be even just the pandemic that's really thrown the business cycle off of the path, and so people are just like trying to hunker down and save costs. And so we certainly got that kind of request from our customers at the start of the pandemic, fortunately not after. So when a customer is saying that, what they're really thinking is that I don't see how you'd be critical in helping me achieve my goal, so you're not my priority at the moment. So I believe that if the pain is there, the budget will follow. And I can illustrate that with a very simple anecdote that I picked up from this book called Gap Selling by Keenan. And in the book, he said that, imagine that you have a headache, and the headache is actually can be cured by this $10,000 pill. But your headache is just a migraine. It's a passing nuisance that happens once every couple of months. And, it just doesn't justify to spend $10,000 on a pill, right? That is going to just fix something that happens once in a while. But however, imagine that the headache that you're getting is actually due to a brain tumor. And in that situation, that $10,000 suddenly doesn't become so onerous, doesn't become so expensive. And I would even think that, if you don't have the $10,000, you will knock on your friends and family's door to fundraise that $10,000 in order to help yourself get through this brain cancer. And so if the pain is sufficiently there, the budget will follow. And of course, in this situation, I would say firstly is to tread with respect and empathy. Sometimes maybe it doesn't mean that the impact wasn't realized, but that the client is really just going a tough time in their business. And so we want to not make them feel like their backs are pushed against the wall. We want to be able to listen to them and hear them out, and be empathetic and be the business partner that we say that we are towards them. So again, in this situation, it's also helpful to orient your customers' focus to the future. So as you're listening to them, also ask questions about, so then what do they want? What are their goals moving forward? Because I can almost guarantee you that as bad as a business might be in the situation that they are, they still have goals and they still have milestones they want to achieve in the short and medium and long term as well, right? So listen to that, understanding what those might be. And again, if your product or service fits that agenda of theirs, is able to help them reach their goal, then orient their focus towards it and tell them, hey, if you want to reach here, actually, you may not be aware, but we can actually do this, and here's how we can help. And again, that conversation is a lot more positive, it's a lot more productive, it's focused on the future and opportunity, and you can help them get to where they want to be. And assuming that it's fit, right? It's a customer that is an ICP, you see a long-term working relationship, but the cash flow issue is still there, budget constraint is still there. Get creative with pricing plans. In this situation, I often will work with my CS to think about what are the things that we want to trade with the client. Think about what are the things that we want, right? For example, perhaps we can give them a discount or reduce the scope and reduce the size of the contract if we are able to get them to give us perhaps a customer story, or perhaps they can be a guest, make a guest appearance at our next prospective webinar sessions, right? And share with all our prospects how they are gaining value from using our product or services. Or perhaps your customer is in the position to, or in the industry to be able to recommend you new customers, right? Or introduce you to another department that that can get value out of using your product or your service, but you haven't been able to penetrate into that part of the department, right? So think about what you might want, work with them together, ask them what do they think, how do they think we can help them as well, right? Come up with creative pricing plans. All right, and lastly, loss of stakeholder. So sometimes it may be that the person that is a huge champion of your product, the super user, might suddenly, like leave. Hopefully it's not suddenly, you would have already had the conversation, you're close enough to hear that. But words come to us sometimes, the champion that you are working with very closely are leaving, and someone else is supposed to take over, right? And that they're saying that they won't renew the subscription until they find someone to replace the person that has been using the product or service. So when that's happening, the person that's emailing you about this or telling you about this, who is not the user that you were grooming, is likely thinking this: he or she is thinking, I have no idea what your product really does, and I have no idea how it does benefit me and the company. So you want to step into the shoe of this person who suddenly has inherited this, I guess, like extra work to figure out how does this fit into our process, and that I have to find or be the replacement for the person that's left, right? So it can feel like an extra work for them, and they may not have the time or be able to see that you're the priority at the moment. So in this situation, you want to talk to the person and figure out what are their personal goals and KPIs and where they want to get to, and help them see that where, in a way, it's almost like reselling to the individual, like repitching in a way to that individual, by first obviously understanding what is his or her pain points and goals, and helping them see how your product and services fits, right? But assuming that you have talked to the person and that person is not the right person, right? So you can ask that person, is there anyone you have in mind to suggest within the organization that can take over as the person to use your product or services? And the person you're talking to might be appreciative of this, because you may be lifting some workload off them, right? They may be quite happy to suggest you, actually, Susan from that department is a better, user of this tool and product. I'll introduce to you guys. Or don't be afraid to go back to your previous super user, your previous champion, and ask, hey, you know what? Were there anybody in your mind that you think would be best fit to take over your position after you have left? Go out and reach out to them and ask them, right? You don't ask, you won't know. And again, I've already touched a little bit on this, but in any case, because you have kind of lost the link to the organization, and a lot of them won't have previous context as to why your product or service exists in the organization in the first place. Whoever you talk to, again, you want to orient them to the future, find out what is it that their goals, what is it that they want to achieve, help them see that where you fit. And obviously, if past milestones achieved and results achieved are relevant, share that. Don't be afraid to share that. Show them how you've been adding value to the organization and how you can continue adding value to the organization. All right. But yeah, again, this shouldn't really happen, because from day one, you needed to be thinking about account mapping, right? Finding ways to network yourself in the organization so that you're not locked out when that one person leaves, okay? Okay, so before I end today, I wanted to share two more things about how we think about managing churn, as well as to share a little bit of like another thing that we do sometimes. So one of the things that I would do with my CS when the churn request is raised is doing a quick litmus test of asking the CS these 5 questions. So this doesn't need to be just used during when the customer raises a churn. It's actually very helpful to ask yourself this question as a CS periodically along the way, right? You can sit down with your manager and have your manager quiz you, or you can sit down with your peer and ask each other question. So what this set of 5 questions tells you, be able to give you, is that a rough gauge of how well you know your customers, and for that, kind of proxy like where are the gaps that you have in terms of knowing whether they may be an account that has potential to grow, or an account that might be on the way to churn. So I'll give you an example. The first example is, when I sit down with my CS and I ask them, okay, your client has asked to churn. Can you articulate to me why exactly the client signed up? And more or less, I found that, if the CS is able to be quite articulate and able to share with examples exactly why the client has signed up, we are then better are able to understand, okay, then maybe it is about other issues, right? And because we're quite clear why they signed up for it, right? So the next step is actually, okay, go and ask them, okay, you're so sure, talk to client, this is the reason why you sign up, and you confirm that's still the case. So what else is in the way that's causing us to not be able to work together, right? So it starts giving you kind of like some clarity on like where you should go next. Another question that you can ask is, are you able to explain how your client is currently using the product? So if you're able to, as a CS, you're able to explain quite in detail exactly how your client is using the product, again, it gives you a clue, right? Like, okay, actually, or the opposite is that if you're actually realizing, hey, actually, I don't really know how my client is using the product, perhaps the problem is that perhaps that they have missed out on a very key feature that is very helpful for them, but they just don't know how to use it and they've been too busy to raise it up, right? So I hope you start seeing that this quick 5 test helps you either throughout the customer lifecycle or at the moment when they say they want to churn, to sort of start sizing and seeing where could be the holes and the gaps and how likely that this account may churn, for example, right? So the other questions are, do you know what is the definition of success for your client? I think that's quite straightforward. Can your client articulate where your product fit into the process? I quite like this because if you have picked up verbatims from your client who are able to verbalize themselves where you fit into their process, that's a really good sign, right? And who have you been building a relationship with? This relates to the previous slide, which is to prevent loss of stakeholder. Okay, finally, I wanted to touch on how we think about the different steps that we can take in order to minimize the risk of the churn happen when the churn request is raised, right? So the first one is that we want to be able to defend full revenue. So we want to come up with all the ways that we can think of in order to be able to defend the full revenue. Again, recurring revenue business model means that it compounds, the churn compounds, and that if there's a churn, it's much harder to patch it up with new MRR. So for example, are you able to retain the same contract amount by adding scope? For example, adding new feature, giving them early access to a very critical feature, or giving them extra training or coming up with personalized training for your clients. Should that be not working in terms of retaining the client, then you can think about logo retention, because you don't want to close the door, right? So maybe it's about contracting the contract amount for this period of time, take away certain features or whatever benefits that the client might have been enjoying that doesn't stand in the way of them achieving the value. So for example, maybe currently your client's enjoying all access, right? Unlimited access for all users to the platform. Perhaps moving forward for the next 6 months, it would be only 5 users who get like unlimited access, right? Should that doesn't work, look at pause, right? You can perhaps propose to your customer, hey, I know you having a tough time. Perhaps you can pause it for like 3 to 6 months, or you really believe that this is only most valuable when a certain project launches. Let's pause for a while. I think sometimes pausing is quite works out quite neatly because it already sets in their mind the expectation that at X date the contract will restart itself, and that if that it doesn't automatically restart, then it sets in their head that at X date we will be having this conversation and that you have agreed, right? In this situation, it's good to get the client to tell you when they let them set the date so that they are holding themselves accountable as well. And then lastly, sometimes churn just gotta happen, and that's okay because churn happens even to the best of the companies and the best of the CSMs, right? And we obviously don't want to push so hard that the client feels like they lost control of the situation, they have no choice because we're just trying so hard to retain them. So sometimes a churn is okay, but it is not the end of the story, because once a churn has happened, it doesn't mean that all the relationships that you've built, all the work that you've done in the past is lost cause. What you need to do is start like nurturing them, still reach out to them every once in a while and find out if they are doing okay, because remember, in business, priority changes, goal changes, and so maybe right now it might not be the right time, but 6 months later it will be the perfect alignment of interest and time to come back on board again. All right, so before I go, just a quick reminder that I also remind myself most of the time is to, when a churn request is raised, the most important thing is to keep calm. Because when you keep calm, that allows you the ability to start being creative and thinking of different plans and ways and proposals that you can talk to your customers, right? Because remember, churn is a signal. There's still work to be done after that. And if we're too anxious, then it kind of blocks the creativity in us. And again, focus on what you can control, right? There's no time machine that you can go back and control the sales process, or maybe you aren't able to influence the product roadmap, but there's always something that as a CS you can control. It's much more productive and a pleasant experience if you look at what you can control. All right. Okay, that's it. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Feel free to send in any questions, or if you want to have a conversation about this, to sylvia@omnalytics.co. Alternatively, find me on LinkedIn and we can connect over there. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time that you have spent listening to me, and I hope you found this useful, and take care. Bye.